The fairy lights strung across my brother Derek's new backyard created a warm glow against the evening sky. His modest two-bedroom starter home in the suburbs was packed with family and friends celebrating his achievement. Mom had been posting photos on Facebook all afternoon with captions about her successful son, and so proud of this homeowner. My sister Amanda was circulating through the crowd, telling anyone who would listen about how she'd helped Derek pick out paint colors. I stood near the refreshment table, holding a glass of wine and observing the celebration with quiet contentment. My husband Marcus stood beside me, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back. We'd driven 2 hours to attend, leaving our own home at 6 in the morning to make it on time. The paint color really makes the room pop, Amanda was saying to a cluster of relatives near the kitchen. I have such an eye for design. Derek's lucky I was available to help him. Mom nodded enthusiastically. Amanda has always been so creative. And Derek worked so hard to save for this place. 2 years of overtime and careful budgeting. I took another sip of wine. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. Derek was holding court on the back patio, showing off the small yard to his friends. Got it for a steal, he was saying. The market was just right. And I've been driving my 2015 Honda Civic for 6 years now, saved every penny. That's how you do it. Financial discipline. Several people murmured their approval. Dad clapped Derek on the shoulder with obvious pride. Uncle Paul arrived fashionably late, carrying a bottle of expensive scotch and a card. He was Dad's younger brother, successful in commercial real estate, and someone my parents usually kept at arm's length from me. I'd always wondered why, but the distance between our families had grown over the years since I'd gotten married. Paul. Dad's voice was tight as he greeted his brother. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, Uncle Paul said warmly. He handed the scotch to Derek, then turned to survey the room. His eyes found me almost immediately and his face broke into a genuine smile. There she is. How are you doing? I'm well, Uncle Paul. You. Can't complain. He crossed the room to give me a hug. Mom's heavy perfume, impossible to breathe through, wafted past as she intercepted him halfway. Paul, let me show you the kitchen renovations Derek did, Mom said quickly, her rehearsed smile firmly in place. They're really impressive. In a minute, Susan. I want to catch up with my niece first. Uncle Paul gently sidestepped her and continued toward me. I haven't seen you since the wedding. How's married life treating you? It's wonderful, I said honestly. Marcus extended his hand and Uncle Paul shook it warmly. Good man, Uncle Paul said to Marcus. Your parents are good people. I've known your father through business circles for years. They speak highly of you too, Marcus replied. The conversation was pleasant and ordinary until Uncle Paul's expression shifted to something more curious. So, he said, his voice carrying slightly more than necessary across the suddenly quieter room, how's that $120,000 Tesla his parents gifted you working out? The effect was instantaneous. Derek stopped mid-sentence about his used car's fuel efficiency. Amanda's wine glass paused halfway to her lips. The handful of relatives nearby turned to stare. And my parents exchanged looks of pure panic. My father whispered, Paul, what Tesla? I calmly sipped my wine as Uncle Paul continued, his tone genuinely interested. The Model S Plaid, right? I saw it when I had lunch with Bill and Margaret last month. Beautiful vehicle. They said they wanted to give you something special after the wedding, something that would last. Marcus's parents, Bill and Margaret, who had indeed gifted me a fully loaded Tesla Model S Plaid 6 months ago, which I drove every day to my job as a senior software engineer at a tech company in the city. I don't understand, Mom said, her voice strained. She looked at me with something between confusion and accusation. You drive a Tesla? I do, I confirmed, my voice steady. Since when? Dad demanded. Since March, I replied. Bill and Margaret gave it to me as a wedding gift. They wanted to celebrate the marriage and support my career. Derek's face had gone an alarming shade of red. You've had a $120,000 car for 6 months and never mentioned it? You never asked, I said simply. Amanda set her wine glass down with too much force. That's ridiculous. Why wouldn't you tell your family about something like that? Uncle Paul's eyebrows rose. You didn't know? I assumed. Well, you all attended the wedding. I thought surely you'd seen it since then. The silence that followed was deafening. The party's cheerful atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a tension so thick it was almost tangible. Other guests began to quietly drift away from our corner of the yard, sensing family drama brewing. "We haven't exactly been invited to visit," Marcus said quietly. His voice was polite but firm. "My parents have asked your family to dinner several times. The invitations were declined." Mom's face flushed. "We've been busy. For 6 months. Uncle Paul's tone was mild, but there was an edge to it now. "That's a long time to be too busy for family. Especially when there's clearly a lot you've missed." "What's that supposed to mean?" Dad's voice had risen slightly. Uncle Paul shrugged. "Just seems odd that you're all celebrating Derek's used Honda and starter home, which are both great accomplishments, don't get me wrong, while apparently having no idea that your daughter has been driving a vehicle worth more than his entire down payment." "That's not the point," Amanda snapped. "The point is she should have told us." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "So you could do what, exactly?" The question hung in the air. Amanda opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "So we could celebrate with you. Obviously. Like you're celebrating Derek's house?" I gestured around the packed yard, the decorations, the carefully arranged food table. "When I bought my house last year, there was no party. No Facebook posts. No proud parents telling everyone within earshot. You bought a house." Mom's voice was faint. Uncle Paul chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "Oh, this just gets better. Bill and Margaret helped with that too, didn't they? The place in Riverside with the view." "They co-signed," Marcus confirmed. "We're paying the mortgage ourselves, but they helped us qualify for a better rate. The house is worth about $680,000. Derek made a choking sound. His modest home had cost $195,000. That's not possible," Dad stammered. "On your salaries." "On my salary," I corrected. "I make $145,000 a year as a senior software engineer. Marcus makes $95,000 as a project manager. We're doing quite well, actually." The number seemed to physically stagger my parents. Mom reached for the patio railing to steady herself. "You make how much?" she whispered. $145,000 base salary, plus annual bonus and stock options. It's been in that range for 2 years now." Amanda's expression had gone from angry to something resembling shock. "But you never said anything. You never acted like." "Like what?" "Like I was successful." I took another sip of wine, my hand perfectly steady. "What would that have looked like, Amanda? Should I have bragged about my salary at family dinners? Showed up in designer clothes? Made sure everyone knew about my accomplishments?" "That's not what I meant," she said weakly. "Isn't it?" Uncle Paul interjected. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like this family has a very selective definition of success. Derek's starter home gets a party. Amanda's paint color consultation gets praised. But actual financial success, that gets ignored." "That's not fair," Mom protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it?" Uncle Paul repeated. "When was the last time you asked about her job? Her life? Anything beyond surface pleasantries?" The silence was answer enough. Derek found his voice first. "So what, you've just been hiding your success from us? Pretending to be, what? Poor?" "I haven't been pretending anything," I replied. "I've been living my life. I come to family events when invited. I'm polite. I ask about your lives. But you've never asked about mine in any meaningful way. Because you never volunteered the information." Dad said, his voice rising. "I shouldn't have to volunteer it," I said, my voice still calm despite the emotion building in my chest. "Normal families ask. Normal families show interest. Normal families don't treat one child like a success story and another like an afterthought." "We don't do that," Mom said automatically. Uncle Paul laughed, a sharp bark of disbelief. "Susan, I've watched you do it for years. Every family gathering, it's Derek this and Amanda that. This 1 inch," he gestured to me, "barely gets acknowledged unless she's being asked to help serve food or clean up." The truth of his words settled over the patio like a heavy blanket. Several relatives who had been pretending not to listen were now openly staring. Marcus spoke up, his voice gentle but firm. "My parents noticed it at the wedding. The way your family treated her versus how they treated Derek and Amanda. They wanted to do something special, something that showed she was valued and celebrated. The Tesla was their way of saying, "We see you. We're proud of you." So they were trying to make us look bad? Dad's voice was defensive now. No, Marcus said patiently. They were trying to make their daughter-in-law feel special. The fact that it makes you look bad is a reflection of your choices, not theirs. Derek slammed his beer bottle down on the patio table. This is my housewarming party. Can we not do this right now? Actually, Uncle Paul said, pulling out his phone, I think now is the perfect time. Because I've been wondering about something. He scrolled for a moment, then held up his screen. Bill sent me these photos last week. Is this your house? I glanced at the phone and nodded. The photos showed our home's exterior, a beautiful craftsman-style house with a manicured lawn and mountain views in the background. Uncle Paul turned the phone to show my parents. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, home office, updated kitchen, 2-car garage. They paid $680,000 last year. She's living in a house worth 3.5 times what Derek's place cost, and you had no idea. Mom's hand went to her throat. I don't understand how this happened. It happened because she's talented and hardworking, Uncle Paul said simply. It happened because she married into a family that recognizes and celebrates success. And it happened without any of you noticing because you were too busy focusing on your golden children. That's not fair, Amanda protested weakly. Isn't it? I asked, finally allowing some emotion into my voice. When Derek graduated college, you threw him a party. When Amanda got her first apartment, you helped her move and bought her furniture. When I graduated with honors with my computer science degree, you asked if I was sure I wouldn't rather go into teaching because it was more stable. We were trying to be practical, Dad said. You were trying to keep me small, I corrected. And it worked for a while. I stopped sharing my successes because they made you uncomfortable. I stopped talking about my job because you changed the subject. I stopped inviting you to my life because it was clear you weren't interested. Marcus's hand found mine again, squeezing gently. His support was silent but absolute. Uncle Paul tucked his phone away. Here's what really gets me. Bill and Margaret have been nothing but gracious about your family. They've invited you to dinners, holiday celebrations, even offered to host family gatherings at their place. You've declined every single invitation. We didn't want to impose, Mom said. You didn't want to face the fact that her in-laws treat her better than you do, Uncle Paul said bluntly. And now here we are at a party celebrating Derek's very modest accomplishments while your daughter drives a 6-figure car to a job that pays more than most people make in 2 years, and you had no idea. The shame on my parents' faces was almost painful to watch. Almost. Derek's girlfriend, Sarah, who had been silent throughout the entire exchange, spoke up quietly. I think maybe we should all take a breath and... No, I interrupted gently. I appreciate the attempt at peacekeeping, Sarah, but this conversation is long overdue. I turned to my parents. For years I've watched you celebrate Derek and Amanda for the smallest things. Derek gets praised for showing up to work on time. Amanda gets applauded for remembering someone's birthday. But when I got promoted to senior engineer, silence. When I bought my house, silence. When I married a wonderful man from a loving family, you complained that the wedding was too expensive and too far away. The venue was unreasonable, Dad muttered. The venue was beautiful and Marcus's parents paid for most of it, I countered. They wanted their son to have the wedding of his dreams. They wanted me to feel like family. They succeeded where you failed. Mom's eyes were filling with tears now, but they were angry tears, not remorseful ones. We did our best. We raised you, fed you, clothed you. That's the baseline, I interrupted. That's the bare minimum of parenting. Congratulations on meeting the legal requirements for not having your children taken away. Uncle Paul snorted, then tried to cover it with a cough. What do you want from us? Dad demanded. An apology? Fine. I'm sorry we didn't ask about your car. They're happy. I shook my head slowly. That's not an apology. That's you being annoyed that you got caught treating your children differently. A real apology would acknowledge the pattern, not just this one incident. There is no pattern, Amanda insisted, but her voice was uncertain now. Really? Uncle Paul pulled out his phone again. Should we go through Susan's Facebook? Count how many posts are about Derek versus posts about this one? I've been keeping track actually. In the last year, Derek has been mentioned 47 times. Amanda 32 times. Your daughter? 3 times. Once when she was in the background of a family photo, once when Susan needed someone to bring a dish to Thanksgiving, and once when she was mentioned in passing at Derek's birthday. The specificity of Uncle Paul's tracking was startling. He'd clearly been paying attention to what my parents hadn't noticed, or had chosen to ignore. You've been counting? Mom asked weakly. Someone had to, Uncle Paul said. Because it's been obvious for years that something was wrong. I just didn't realize the extent until recently. Derek had gone very quiet. His celebration, his moment in the spotlight had been completely derailed. Part of me felt bad about that. The rest of me remembered every achievement of mine that had been ignored or minimized and felt nothing but vindication. I think we should go, Marcus said quietly to me. We've said what needed to be said. I nodded, setting down my wine glass on the nearest table. Congratulations on your house, Derek. Really is a nice place. I hope you're happy here. The words were genuine. Derek's success didn't diminish my own and I bore him no ill will. But I was done pretending that my family's treatment of me was normal or acceptable. Wait, Mom said as we turned to leave. You can't drop all this and then leave. Watch me, I said simply. Uncle Paul walked with us to the driveway. True to his word, my Tesla Model S Plaid was parked at the curb, its sleek lines and custom paint job making Derek's used Honda look even more modest by comparison. She's beautiful, Uncle Paul said admiringly. Bill has good taste. He does, I agreed. In cars and in daughters-in-law, according to Margaret. Uncle Paul chuckled. She's not wrong. You know they brag about you constantly, right? To anyone who will listen. Bill carries photos of your house on his phone. Margaret tells everyone at her book club about your job. They're so proud of you. The contrast with my own parents was stark and painful. Thank you, I said quietly, for saying something. I know it made things awkward. Things were already awkward, Uncle Paul said. They just weren't honest. Now they're both. He hesitated, then added, I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I thought maybe I was overreacting or that it wasn't my place. It's not your fault, I assured him. You can't fix other people's blind spots. Marcus unlocked the Tesla and we climbed in. The interior was pristine leather and cutting-edge technology. The startup sequence played its distinctive sound, and the massive touchscreen lit up with our customized home screen. Through the windshield I could see my family gathered on Derek's front lawn watching us. Mom was crying openly now. Dad looked angry. Amanda seemed confused. Derek just looked stunned. Uncle Paul gave us a wave as we pulled away from the curb. The Tesla's acceleration was smooth and powerful, a physical representation of moving forward. You okay? Marcus asked as we merged onto the highway. I'm okay, I said and realized it was true. I'm actually better than okay. That needed to happen. Your Uncle Paul is something else, Marcus observed. He really had been keeping track. Someone needed to, I echoed his earlier words. And I'm glad it was him. My phone buzzed with incoming text. I glanced at the screen. 3 messages from Amanda, 2 from Derek and 7 from my mother. I silenced the notifications without reading them. Not engaging? Marcus asked. Not tonight, I confirmed. Tonight I just want to drive home in my beautiful car to our beautiful house, and have dinner with my husband who actually sees me and values me. I can arrange that, Marcus said with a smile. Mom texted earlier. She and Dad want to know if we're free for brunch tomorrow. They want to celebrate your promotion. The promotion I'd received 2 weeks ago and mentioned to my family in passing at Amanda's birthday party, only to have the conversation immediately redirected to Amanda's new haircut. Tell them yes, I said. Definitely yes. As we drove through the evening traffic, the lights of the city spread out before us like a galaxy of possibilities. Behind us, Derek's modest housewarming party and my family's shocked faces faded into memory. Ahead was home, comfort, and people who actually celebrated my success instead of resenting it. The Tesla hummed quietly beneath us, a $120,000 symbol of everything my family had missed by refusing to see me. Uncle Paul's question had ripped the Band-Aid off a wound that had been festering for years, and while the exposure hurt, it was the kind of pain that preceded healing. I thought about the photos Uncle Paul had shown. My house, my car, my life. A life I'd built through hard work and talent, supported by people who believed in me. My parents had no claim to that success. They'd had their chance to be part of it, to celebrate it, to take pride in it. They'd chosen differently. And that, I realized as we pulled into our driveway 45 minutes later, was entirely their loss, not mine. Marcus parked the Tesla in our spacious garage next to his sensible sedan. Inside, our home was exactly as we'd left it. Clean, comfortable, and unmistakably ours. No family photos of parents who couldn't be bothered to attend our housewarming. No obligations to people who saw me as an afterthought. Just peace, possibility, and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived, whether my family noticed it or not. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Uncle Paul. Proud of you, kiddo. You handled that with more grace than they deserved. Dinner next week? I smiled and typed back, absolutely. And bring Margaret and Bill if they're free. Let's make it a celebration. Because that's what this was, ultimately. Not a confrontation or a breakdown, but a celebration of boundaries established, truths spoken, and a future where I no longer had to shrink myself to make others comfortable. The Tesla sat in the garage, gleaming under the overhead lights. Tomorrow I'd drive it to work, park it in my reserved spot, and continue building the life I deserved. Tonight, though, I was just going to sit in my beautiful home with my wonderful husband and enjoy the peace that came from finally being seen. Even if the people who should have been looking had to be forced to open their eyes.